Hello and namaste to everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to yet another episode of On the Mic with Parth. Today's guest on this podcast is somebody that I personally look up to, who I'm personally inspired by, Allie Pepper from Australia. She has been climbing mountains since 23 years and has scaled multiple 8,000ers, so many mountains in South America, and has had some crazy experiences in the mountains that we spoke about in this podcast. Her first 8,000 meter expedition was to Cho Oyu, the sixth highest mountain in the world, and she climbed Cho Oyu by herself without supplementary oxygen. And since then, there has been no looking back. She has been on top of so many 8,000ers, Everest, Annapurna, Manaslu, Broad Peak, and so many other mountains in South America. In this conversation, we spoke about so many things. Her journey, how she has trained to climb these mountains without oxygen, and so many amazing experiences that one has on these amazing expeditions, and so much more. And in 2024, she is somebody to keep your eyes on, because she is going to be attempting to climb all 14 8,000 meter mountains without supplementary oxygen in a record span of time. We wish her all the best for this project. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I urge you to watch this till the very end, because if you are somebody who is aspiring to climb mountains or whatever mountains you might have in your personal life, her journey, her experiences is something which will help you achieve your goals. So without much further delay, I will let you guys dive into the conversation I had with Allie Pepper. Enjoy. Whenever you are ready, we can start.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Ready.
So, hello and namaste. How are you?
Namaste. Happy Dashain.
Oh, you too. Wish you the same.
Thank you.
So, where are you right now?
I'm in my home back in Australia now in it's called the Blue Mountains is the area that I'm from. So pretty close to Sydney, like an hour and just over an hour away from Sydney.
As I was telling you before, that I have been following you, and I'm really inspired by the achievements that you have, first of all, and beyond that, the hard work and the one-pointed focus that goes into it. So whenever I introduce somebody, like people might have seen the introduction now, it feels very unfair to me to introduce people by just their achievements. I think it's very surface level. So if, as a human being, I ask you, who are you? How would you introduce yourself?
There's a lot of things that are important to me in terms of like achievements, maybe, but just, yeah, like supporting, I guess, like, for example, like at the moment, my current project, I'm sort of aiming to inspire a particular audience, which is women who are going through menopause, because that's been my journey, and it's been a crazy, challenging journey. Yeah, so that's like important to me. I guess the other thing, like when I think about achievements, like I failed at school. So in my final years of studying, we call it year 12 here in Australia, I bombed out and I got like 30% or something like that. That was actually the first time I went to India. Like I traveled to India on a bit of a spiritual journey because I felt a bit lost. And then not going to university, I guess like getting to where I am now has been an achievement for me, I would say. But back then in 1997, when I traveled to India for the first time, it was like a huge shock for me. Coming from Australia, just how many people, like it was like a massive cultural shock, honestly. And being a woman as well, I was sort of like wearing Western clothes and I just had this crowd around me everywhere I went. with the blue eyes and all this kind of thing. Yeah, I went all over the place. I visited Sacha Sai Baba, Rishikesh.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Varanasi,
Mm-hmm.
Haridwar for the
Mm-hmm.
Kumbh Mela. Yeah, I did a lot of interesting things. I worked on some organic farms.
Hmm.
It was a life-changing experience at that
Hmm.
age.
Did you find what you were looking for? You came to India because somewhere you felt that you were lost, you wanted some answers, some clarity, some direction
It's
that you were seeking.
difficult, because it's so long ago. Like, I'm 48 now,
Hmm.
and I was 21 or 22 at the time, kind of thing. Like, I have vague memories of the feelings that I
Hmm.
felt. I was just on this journey of searching, and what I realized, like, I went to Nepal as well, like
Hmm.
for a month then.
Hmm.
That was the first time I went to Nepal and went to the Annapurna area. When I came home, I felt like I didn't find what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was actually looking for was inside me. And I
Mm-hmm.
had been searching high and low outside of myself.
Mm.
And that was, I guess, a big lesson for me at the time. It wasn't outside of myself
Mm.
what I was searching for. Yeah.
And I think most people never reach this realization. They do different things, they climb different mountains, or they do different businesses or jobs in the world. They get into relationships thinking that what they are seeking, they will find in these activities.
Yeah.
For me, it was the mountains that made me realize. After I climbed Everest, I thought that once I climb Everest, I will be at the peak within myself also, but nothing happened. It was a beautiful experience for sure, but I was like, it was not up there. Then I was in a
Yeah.
complete shock. And that's when I realized, as you very rightly said, that it is what you're seeking was never away. It was always here. It was too close to you. That's why you couldn't see it.
Yes, I know. It's so funny. And that journey just continues, like I'm every day learning more
Hmm.
things. And that inner journey is just as exciting as the outer journey. And yeah, it really is. It really is.
I, I would like to open up one more layer into this because it's a very interesting conversation. Because, like this, you really get to see beyond just the achievements what that human being is like. So, you said what you were looking for was right here within you. So, what is
Yeah.
that you found within yourself? What is that in your
Yeah, I
experience?
think at the time, like it's changed, like I think at the time when I was that young, I just sort of realized like I was on this kind of quest to discover who I was.
Hmm.
I felt like a failure from school, from other things that had like happened to me. I felt like I was a victim.
Hmm.
I had a low self-esteem, and I really just was like looking for the answer to becoming like a direction. That then when I came home and I felt like I didn't find it in India,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is like one of the most spiritual, countries on the earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Himalaya. I also went to the Himalaya then. I came back and I felt like a little empty,
Hmm.
which is used to happen to me after climbing on mountains too. But I then just went to a college here and I picked out a brochure because I decided it was time to find like a new career or even a career because I had
Mm-hmm.
just been doing casual things until then. And that's when I picked out this brochure, and I was a hippie and I read it wrong, and it said outdoor recreation to
Mm-hmm.
me. Was an outdoor recreation course
Okay.
to learn to be a guide and a leader in the outdoors. And I love the outdoors. And I just decided, well, I'm going to recreate myself, like I'm going to do something for me. Just don't know anything about this. I just found something that I was good at. But the thing is, like, I grew up here in the Blue Mountains. It's like
Hmm.
Australia's like a climbing area. And I
Hmm.
didn't even know there was rock climbing.
Hmm.
I didn't know what
Hmm.
it was. I didn't know what canyoning was or abseiling or any of those activities. It was a bit of a life-changing moment for me, and I started to, I guess, like heal myself. I became more confident as I learned skills to show other people, like to guide other people. So that's just part of the journey, you know, of discovering who I am. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it was like the start of it, I guess, in terms of outdoor stuff.
You were 21, 22 when you first discovered outdoors properly.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Like when you got into this, you started guiding people. From there to climbing 8,000ers without no oxygen. What
Yeah,
was that
like
journey like?
one of the flattest countries in the world with no glaciers.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully we have the New Zealanders, like I can say this because I'm half New Zealand. My mum's from New Zealand and my
Okay.
dad's from Australia, but we call it our Eastern Island.
Okay.
But it's another country. So New Zealand has Alps.
Hmm.
Uh and yeah, through this course, I just got a invitation by one of
Hmm.
the instructors to
Hmm.
go do a technical mountaineering course there because I was, you know, pretty good at these outdoor skills.
Hmm.
And I did this 10-day technical mountaineering course there, and that's where I found my passion, to be honest. After that, a couple of the instructors, I started working at the Australian School of Mountaineering, which it has been a few jokes about it, like the
Hmm.
Australian School of Mountaineering. I started working there, and a couple of the instructors said to me, "Oh, look, we're going to go to New Zealand and climb for the year, sell this trip to this mountain called Aconcagua. Then if you get enough places on the trip, you can come for free."
Hmm.
Challenge
Perfect.
accepted. Yeah, challenge accepted. And as I was finishing my outdoor leadership course, I managed to sell 11 places on this expedition to this
Ooh.
mountain. Yeah, that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about
Hmm.
it. And yeah, so in 2000, that was my first high altitude peak. What I realized was like, oh, I'm actually like strong enough not to just look after myself, but to look after other people. I had some genetic kind of disposition
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to be strong up there,
Mm-hmm.
which I never knew about.
Hmm.
And of course, like if I felt like, well, I'm good at this, I want
Hmm.
more. I would describe that as the time that I became addicted to thin air. I spent around 3 years climbing and guiding in South America. I really was a climbing bum. And it was such a great opportunity, you know, like
Hmm.
climbing on Patagonian peaks and spires and technical climbing in Peru. I was soloing some routes there. I've just really I guided Aconcagua another, I don't know, 12 times at that point. And I was guiding in Peru, technical guiding, you know, like short roping and that kind of thing, because it's quite.
Hmm.
Then I just decided, well, I'm ready for the Himalaya. I found one of my friends that works here in the Blue Mountains. He had done Denali. I said to him, do you want to go to Cho Oyu?
Mm-hmm.
Because on Aconcagua, I met a friend from Nepal who had a guiding company.
Mm-hmm.
He could organize the logistics, and off we went to Cho Oyu in 2007. He unfortunately got frostnip on 8 of his toes while we were acclimatizing. He stayed at the base camp and I went to the summit on my own.
I read about it, yes. And just to let people know that you went on your own, which is a very hard thing to do. I mean, without a Sherpa climbing partner, it's a very
Yeah,
difficult thing to do everything by yourself. And secondly, you went without O2.
I did.
So
Yeah, I wasn't
I
even thinking to use it.
so I want to go back a little bit and ask you, why did you decide to climb Cho Oyu, or after all these 8,000ers that you've done without O2? Because this is like a out of 100, maybe one or two people are able to climb a 8,000er without O2. So why did
Yeah.
you decide that?
I just didn't even think it was an option. At the time, like back in 2007, I had friends, from adventure consultants and things like that I knew because I met them in New Zealand climbing. They were using oxygen to guide. That was pretty common. But if you were going to climb yourself, then it wasn't a thing, right? Like it just wasn't a thing. So I just never even thought to use it, to be honest. After Cho Oyu, I came down and I was like, oh, this is my calling.
Wow.
Because on the summit day, actually no one else went up. I was completely alone. It was such an amazing spiritual experience, to be honest. Just having complete trust in the universe that I was going to be okay. I had no GPS. I had no weather report, nothing. I had no radio contact on the summit ridge. I knew a lot of people had died there in whiteouts and things like that. I just had, faith that I would be okay. It was a remarkable experience. But when I came back, unfortunately, I just had such a low. I really felt depressed, to be honest. And it sounds weird, but I hadn't really spent much time in Australia, and I came back to Australia and I felt like, wow, I just won the Olympics and no one knew what it was. No one, I know, I kind of felt like, oh, people should be meeting me at the airport with champagne or something. I just came back to this kind of normal, boring life. That's what it felt like. So I felt very empty. I thought, wow, I really wanted to do all 14 in that way, but I'd just been so I was working as a guide. It's one of the lowest paid jobs in Australia. I've never had corporate connections. I had no idea where to start with sponsorship or anything like that. Yeah. So that was a little, I don't know, depressing. It was depressing.
I can understand the mountain high that you feel up there. When you come back to the cities, it's exactly the opposite. It's crazy, and the worst thing is nobody understands. First of all, what we did, and secondly, what we are feeling. Nobody can understand because there is no such experience in their life.
Yeah, of course, my friends were super interested.
Correct.
They were like, wow, that's amazing, or whatever else. But it was more just the fact that I didn't know how I would achieve that dream. How would I go about climbing all 14? So I discovered I had this, I guess, gift. I couldn't do anything with it. And that was the thing that was the most disappointing.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating to have so much that you can do, but not being able to find a way to do it. So then what happened?
Well, I actually wanted to go to Shishapangma in 2008, but they closed the border or whatever because of the Olympics, because they were wanting to put the torch up there or something like that.
Yeah.
I ended up going to the Khumbu, guiding a group of my friends. I went to the base camp in that journey, and one of my friends, Mike Hamill, who we guided together, we actually worked together guiding on Aconcagua, was there guiding on Everest. I really hadn't thought about doing Everest next. It just kind of felt like there's no way I could do Everest next. It's so expensive. When I saw him, I just felt really jealous. If I just knuckled down and for 3 years, if I guide and save every penny, if I climb the highest one, then maybe I won't feel like I need to do all of them. That's what I did. I didn't put crampons on for 3 years. I saved my pennies. I never went to altitude. I was just guiding and, working in outdoor education, just doing back-to-back school camps. Yeah, I basically saved enough money to go to Everest.
Wow.
And so that was the next expedition.
Which year was that, Everest?
2011.
2011, right. 3 years. Wow, you just with one pointed focus, eyes on Everest. I mean, see, this is
Yes.
something which the generation of today does not have. Like, for example, I'm sure even you get these messages. I want to climb Everest. Then if we ask them that, okay, these are the, for example, the courses that you need to do to learn the skills, then you need to gain experience by climbing 6 and 7 thousanders, maybe 1 8,000 at least. You need to physically train that much. You need to, work on either getting sponsors or earn your own money. They don't have the patience to do this. They want to do
It's a
it
lot.
like this. They want to do it fast, or they will forget about it. So this
Yeah.
is something that I want to point out to the people, that 3 years you did not go to altitude, you did not put crampons on. And as a mountaineer, I understand how much we desire to put the crampons on and to
Yeah.
hear that
Funny.
sound of metal on ice and snow and rocks. I understand that. And
And it's
this
your passion, so you have to sacrifice that.
it's
The
beautiful.
trips, like people say, like, oh, just come to New Zealand and climb with me, and you want to,
Mm,
but you have to keep your eyes on the main goal,
wow. Wow. And then 2011, you were on Everest. How was Everest?
And
Because
then 2011, yeah, I finally got to go back again.
Mhm.
I just said to Lawang, I want to climb Everest. What's your best price? From Cho Oyu, I knew I couldn't carry my tent and all my things up to the South Col on my own, because that was the hardest thing. I just said, look, I want to climb with who ideally has been there before. And I just got out of the airplane at Lukla, and that's when I met Dawa Tenzing
Mhm.
Sherpa from
Mhm.
Tamo
Mhm.
near Namche, his big beaming smile, and we just got along. It was just a wonderful partnership. We're still friends now. We climbed on Dalagiri this year as well.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Is it Dawa who once worked with Climbalaya with Mingma Sherpa?
Yes,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
I was on Everest with him. Yes.
Yes, that's right. We had that connection. Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
Correct.
You know
Yes.
how amazing and
Very
kind-hearted he is. Yeah.
and full of positive energy. The face, the smile, so welcoming and so beautiful. I love
And
that guy.
such amazing values,
Mm,
he just embodies those Sherpa values of generosity, hardworking, trustworthy. I was lucky, I guess.
mhm,
And then we went to Lobejay first to climatize there, went up Lobejay East Peak. Then we started on Everest. And what I realized, unfortunately, was that because I hadn't been climbing for so long, my body just didn't go as it did on Cho Oyu with the altitude. I just wasn't as fast. Therefore, I was getting a lot colder. When I climbed Cho Oyu, I was guiding like 6 months of the year at altitude, so I was kind of very
mm,
adapted to it. I decided after a couple of rotations up to camp 3, I could probably make it to the balcony. I didn't think I could make it to the summit. I'd spent so much money
mm, mm,
that I just decided, you know what, like I'm going to use oxygen to climb it. And I didn't have any.
mm,
So I had to go around the base camp and find spare bottles and buy them off people,
mm,
and a mask. So I had this
mm.
crappy Russian mask that didn't fit my face, and off we went. Yeah, we didn't have a sat phone. We didn't know that the weather forecast had changed. Summited in the worst storm. It's probably the worst. Yeah, it is the worst storm. I've summited Annapurna in a storm and blizzard as well, but this storm was way windier. Although Annapurna, I was getting light, not struck by lightning, but I was getting electrocuted.
What the hell?
Another story. But the storm on Everest was terrifying. It was like 60 km an hour wind and around minus 60 degrees.
Oh.
My mask didn't fit and the wind was kind of rushing through it. Couldn't see through my goggles because they were
Hmm.
fogged up and they went
Ah.
iced up. And it wasn't an amazing
No.
experience.
So you turned around. How high were you when the storm hit you? Where were you?
We were on the South Summit when it really kicked in. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
where most people turn back.
You also came back.
No, we summited.
Oh, okay.
Dawa, I didn't know what to do. I'd never been faced with this situation in my life, and I just thought I just have to trust in Dawa's
Correct.
decision. I just was shit scared, and I said to him, I don't know what to do. And he just said, it's only 30 minutes. I didn't even know where we were. He just said, it's only 30 minutes. Let's try. And I was like, okay, fine. So I just was right behind him. Every time he took a step, I put my foot in his footstep. 3 hours later,
Not 30 minutes.
we were on Sherpa time again. This is like a lesson I've learned. But yeah, 3 hours later, we made it.
3 years of hard work and sacrifice, and finally you were up there. Were you able to see any view, or was it all covered?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Do you remember feeling any joy, or what was your feeling on the summit that day?
You know, like I've been mountaineering long enough to know that that's just halfway, and it's the harder half is to come. Even though that's hard, right? Didn't feel any joy. I just wanted to go down and survive. To be honest.
Perfect. That's the goal to have when you're on the summit, to go down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, I say it's halfway, but it's almost a third in that situation.
I want to take you back a little bit to a different parallel aspect to this. Climbing without O2, as we spoke, it's like 100 times harder than with O2. The training and the preparation needs to be next level. You have to be very specific and very proper, careful with your approach to training. So want you to speak a little bit about how do you prepare to climb these, specifically these 8,000ers without O2?
To be honest, I haven't had like a actual structured training program until recently.
Okay.
Maybe the last, I'm going to say 2 years. Yeah, before Annapurna, last year I had training program and that, but before this year, because this year's been the biggest year of my career.
Yes.
Before this year, I had a very structured training program for 10 weeks. But what I'm going to say is, like, even when I don't have this structured training program that's made by my coaches, I'm still training. Like, I'm still running. I love trail running. I'm still getting in altitude, doing my thing, you know, riding my road bike, But the game changer for sure is the experts designing a structured training program with heavy lifting. I can't even explain how it all works because I'm not the expert in it, but it changes closer to the time. I also sort of focus on burning fat. So in my diet, when I'm at home, I don't normally eat a lot of carbs until I train. So I'm only really eating a substantial amount of carbs when I'm training, but I don't eat them in my day-to-day life so much. Of course, like then when I'm on the mountain, I'm only eating carbs, but that's all part of the plan kind of thing.
Yeah. So when you say you don't eat carbs when you are not training, so what do you eat? Is it healthy fats or more protein, or what is the food like?
Like I don't count calories, or
Correct.
I can't do that. Like, and it's not like I don't eat carbs. So I do have like some cereal sort of thing, like I like granola, you can call it, but not a lot. And sometimes I don't have breakfast. It just depends how I feel. But I'm eating a lot of like, I try to eat organic now, like when I'm at home. Yeah, a lot of vegetables, not that much fruit, protein, yogurts, cheese. I like to have like a lot of pickles and sauerkraut and kombucha and stuff like that for gut health. Interesting.
And I would like to again take you back to the training, because it is, see, you've
managed to climb so many 8,000ers without O2. All goes down to the training again. So just explain to me, 1 week when you are training in that structure, just 1 week, how does it look like?
I can explain the training, but I just want to say it doesn't all go down to the training. Doesn't matter how hard I train and how fit and healthy I am, and if I don't get sick on expedition and whatever else, if my mindset's not good, I may as well not leave the couch. And I have like a mindset coach as well. In terms of the training, at the moment, I'm going to be starting back on 4 days a week. Like easing back into it, like 2 strength sessions, 2 cardio sessions. As we build up, I do 6 days a week. In that, I'm just looking at my chalk. It's not a chalk, but I have a whiteboard, and I'm like, I just had that before I left, and it's got my program on it. But basically, 2 strength sessions. I have a hypoxico machine with a mast, and I have I have a bike, and it's set up on a trainer so I can do it at home. And I have like 1 session where I'm on that for like 3 hours. Like it all builds up, but that's kind of one of the most boring ones, and I'm like get really high after it. Yeah, like power. There's some power interval training, trail running, endurance, strength as well. It kind of depends how far out I am on exactly the structure is. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you does the training plan focus more on low intensity but long duration training, like in zone 1, zone 2, where you are not that intense with your heartbeat, but you are going on for longer hours? Is that the approach?
Sort of. It depends where I'm at, because we do build up. And unfortunately, if my coach was here, he'd be able to give you the exact answer.
Correct.
But there's this sort of power intervals and that kind of thing where you're like sprinting on the bike for a certain amount of seconds, and then you stop, and then you just normally, and so that's a different type of thing.
Yes, I understand. And because I have also been coaching people here in India who have mountains as their goal. So far, around 200 people I've been able to coach, and out of them, all of them have been able to climb whichever peak that they have wished to climb, including Everest. I just trained a client for Everest. She was able to climb it in spring. So I understand it's a balance between long duration workouts, but also power sprints workout has to be there. Who is your coach, if you don't mind sharing?
His name is Rowan Smith, and his business is called Summit Strength.
I know him. He used to make reels on YouTube, on Instagram with all the tips of training and diet. I think he's the one. You've climbed so many mountains. Each mountain can be a podcast by itself, you know. You spend 1.5 months there. But I want to ask you a specific question. We saw a very tragic year on Everest in 2023 spring. 17 people died there. It's like the record number. And it's not like Avalanche came and washed away everyone. Not like that. It was individual people passing away at different times because of sickness or exhaustion. And then we saw in autumn right now, recently, a very tragic accident that happened on Shishapangma, where we lost 4 of the most amazing rising climbers in our community. Very heartbreaking. And many other people were injured in that same avalanche and in the rescue effort. The broader question that I want to ask you and would like to know your perspective on it. As I said, see, in mountains, the forces of nature, if accidents happen through that, we understand that an avalanche came and, you know, or maybe you're caught in a storm. Of course, they are also avoidable to a very large extent, but shit happens, right? But when people pass away by getting exhausted, or they go for a summit push, when the conditions clearly were not right, by any idiot could see and say that this is not the time to go up, just wait a bit. So what is the mindset shift happening here? Where do you think the fundamental problem in people's minds are right now?
I think like it's a very complicated
Hmm.
answer because there's not like one answer.
Hmm.
Everything that you've talked about, like there's so many facets to all
Hmm.
of those accidents, and each one needs to be investigated individually. Even behind each one, there's so many things, like even people haven't probably thought about the fact that like many people don't understand their Sherpa. There's communication problems because of language, for example.
Hmm.
People may assume, oh, they didn't listen to their Sherpa, but a lot of the time they don't even speak English or their language, right?
Right.
So it's very difficult. And then sometimes the Sherpa, or it doesn't have to be a Sherpa, the Nepali guide, because they're not all Sherpa, obviously, might not speak English very well. They may not be as experienced as the person that they're guiding, and they might feel like there's this power imbalance and they don't want to say anything, or they don't even know like how they haven't calculated how long oxygen lasts, and they just turn the bottle up because the clients requested it, but they probably shouldn't have, and it runs out. Like there's so many complexities to every single event when we investigate further than what the media just portrays, which are basically people that really don't know all of those things and make assumptions. And as they say, when you make assumptions, it makes an ass out of you and me.
Absolutely.
To assume.
Well said.
I think like, yeah, there's like a lot of things that we can learn. Like there's definitely a lot of things that we can learn. And of
Sure.
course there's things that we can educate ourselves about. I have met people that haven't had a lot of training, but their primary goal is to climb Everest and they don't want to mountaineer again. And I don't agree or disagree with that because that's their dream, like
Sure.
fair enough. At the same time, like I think it's, you need to have feel some type of responsibility to educate yourself on what that means. There has been instances where people have endangered other people because they haven't known how to rappel properly, or
Yes.
they dropped their device, they don't know how to improvise something, just basic technical skills like that.
Sure.
And I'm not blaming them, it's just that they don't know, and what you don't know at the end of the day, right? And it's a very quick lesson when they get there, and I like to call it getting your ass handed to you on a plate, and I've had that happen to me a lot of times.
Okay.
In my career, especially ice climbing, I've had my ass handed to me on a plate multiple times where my ego has been, thrown out the door. Like the mountain or the ice climb's just gone, guess what? Like you weren't ready for this.
Yeah. Sure. Do you have any thoughts on the Shishapangma incident that happened, if you're comfortable sharing them?
Can't talk again because I wasn't there. Like I don't know how the conditions were. I've read some Ralph talked about how later on in the season that wind, loads the like Uda did have a video she put on Instagram the other day about which just actually showed this wind coming over the south face. And you could see the wind loading of the snow
Cornice forming
onto the route. It's one of those things where you can get these like local conditions. I have been in an avalanche in New Zealand. I was skiing this slope. The thing is, like, you have to be in this terrain, right? Like if you're in this terrain, at some point you're gonna see an avalanche, or you're gonna be near an avalanche or whatever.
Sure.
Because we're in that terrain, right? Like we're in the terrain doing what we're doing. And we went to ski this slope. It looked sick. It was just new snow. And of course, like when you're a powder skier, that's what you want to ski. I was with a UAGM guide at the time. I'd done my Avalanche stage 1, and I was with the other skier was a ski patrol. I've been ski patrolling for, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. And we dug a pit and we tested the layers, and we decided that slope was good to ski.
Sure.
They both dropped in, no drama, and I went slightly to the side by like 2 meters. I heard what sounded like a bomb going off, and that's when I turned around and realized there was a wave of snow coming towards me because I triggered the whole slope. And so I was carried away in it. Thankfully, I could rip my skis off when I was under the snow, and I could swim back out. And I swam up, and I stopped with my head above the snow. Yeah, it was pretty terrible. I was screaming, and then I went under, and then I came up, and I was screaming again. And my friends had skied off to the side, and they were just watching to see where I would end up.
And you were not hurt?
No.
Wow.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
In an avalanche, it's like when it stops, it turns to concrete kind of thing.
Yeah, correct.
I was very fortunate that they just had to dig me out, but my head was above.
Wow.
When it comes to, that type of summit day, like people have made in the media, again, have made a lot of assumptions about it. I don't know if you have, but I have never stopped with a shovel and tested the snowpack on a summit day. So we might walk through an area where there's a wind slab, and that's what this was. It was a pocket. It was an isolated pocket of wind slab that I treated. It's very difficult to know. And even I think partly what the problem was on Shishapangma was it was very cold, and Uda said it had been very cold. When it's cold like that, it's very difficult for the layers to bond. Like typically we would say, okay, like on a mountain, let's just be conservative and wait 24 hours and then we start climbing, right? After some snow. But if it's cold, even if we wait 24 hours, the snow doesn't bond together. It's difficult to know.
What you shared was a very beautiful insight into this, that we were not there and we can't understand or know what their mindset was. And well, when it's time, it's time, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. Nobody can stop that.
I don't pretend to know everything about how the universe works or whatever. But what I do know is something for sure, and that is that we're more than our body, and our spirit live on, and their spirit will live on, like not just in people's memories, but in all the things that we do when we're thinking about them. So
absolutely it's a very stupid question, but I will still ask you. which has
stupid questions.
Which has been the hardest mountain you've climbed so far?
It's funny, like, because as mountaineers, we have short-term memories, so the suffering from many years ago has faded, like it really has. Like I can't remember that back to the earlier peaks, I guess, because I'm sure at the time, I did film on the summit of Cho Oyu, and I said, like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. After Everest, I made a video on the base camp saying I never ever want to climb again an 8,000 meter mountain. This was just like way too much. I hadn't slept for like 4 days. I felt like I'd been in a war zone, and I lost my hearing. I lost my hearing coming down for a while as well. Yeah. And so, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. We had a really hard time. Like, it's like they all have stories, like
exactly.
On Manaslu in 2012, we went in spring and it was horrendous. We were up to our chests in snow. We worked just so hard. We went up and down the mountain like 10 times before we could get above Camp 2. it was just next level. And then I went to Lhotse after, and I just couldn't stop crying. I was so exhausted, I just couldn't stop crying.
Wow.
and then yeah, like the last few trips, like definitely Annapurna last year was out there, because we were stuck in a storm for 3 hours at 7,900 meters, and I didn't think we'd be able to make it down, and 2 people didn't make it down, and they had to get rescued 2 days later. Thankfully, we found the team of Indians, and we were we were able to help rescue them, or well, not rescue them, but show them where to go, and in the night, and they had like a 35-hour summit day, and one of them had to get rescued because they had pulmonary edema, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, so that was like an intense summit day. So I don't know.
As I told you, every mountain can be a different podcast by itself, because you spend 35 days there. Can't, speak about a mountain in a minute. Like,
exactly.
but about Annapurna, I understand, because I was there in 2021. Unfortunately, couldn't summit because I had a stomach infection and had to turn around from between Camp 3 and Camp 4, because I had been sick for 3-4 days now, and I was getting weaker and weaker, and especially the route between Camp 2 and Camp 3 through that gully just really screwed me up very badly, because I was already weak. So I made a call to come back, but that's a crazy mountain, and in a span of 20-25 days, we had 3 near misses from an avalanche, like 5-10 minutes. If we would be here and there, we would be surely caught in an avalanche. And when we were in that gully climbing
Don't
from camp,
remind me of going back next year.
you
I
are.
also said I'd never go back there, but I am. Yeah.
How come? You
Anyway,
summited, right?
keep going with your story.
No, how come you are going back to Annapurna?
Because my project is to do all 14 without oxygen in the world's shortest time. Yeah, so I'm going back.
Wow. Describe to me how Karakoram is. You were there in the summer in Pakistan climbing the 8,000ers in Karakoram. Take us through that. How is Karakoram different from the Himalayas?
Have
And
you
how,
been there?
as an Indian, I can never go there, unfortunately, because of India,
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the love that
Awesome.
India, Pakistan have. It's a special kind of love.
Oh, I know.
So Karakoram, how was Karakoram for you?
It was pretty full on. I have to say, like, got a little used to climbing in Nepal and how luxurious it is, to be honest. Like, when I used to live in South America, it was totally different. When I was guiding, carrying this huge backpack, like cooking for everybody, and we all had to carry our own things, and climbing in Peru, same thing, like never had, porters or any of that kind of thing. And climbing in Nepal, like, having climbing with a Sherpa and them carrying extra stuff, and having a base camp with great food, having your gear flown in with a helicopter, and then sometimes flying in with a helicopter yourself even.
Right.
I've got a bit like used to it. And so going to Pakistan felt like it really did feel like when we were walking up the Baltoro, like I was back in South America. It even looked like we were back in South America.
Correct.
And I've been so scared for so long to go there. And I think I'm like kind of happy I haven't gone until now, because things are like changing a lot there, and I guess I've reaped that benefit. It was still a bit of a shock. Yeah, it was still a bit of a shock. There's not really a track per se. Like, there's sort of a track, but not really a track. And the food is not what I would normally eat. And even, some of the Sherpa say the same thing, which I think, well, hey, like, you eat rice normally, right? And you're eating rice again. So it's still like a rice diet, but they don't like that type of rice or that type of curry or whatever. But like for me, I don't eat rice. in my normal life, right? Ever.
Mm.
To have like that huge change, because in Nepal, like in base camp, we get things like pizza and
Everything.
whatever. Yeah, pretty much anything we want, like fresh fruit sometimes, depends what
Correct.
base it is, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we do have that. That was probably the biggest thing.
Mm.
Going to somewhere that was a lot less educated, not in the cities, like definitely not in the city. I was surprised. I was like, Islamabad, wow, it's like a first world city, it felt like.
Oh, really?
I felt like it. Yeah, I was like, wow, the streets are so nice and it's clean, and
Oh, really?
yeah, I really did. I really did.
Interesting.
Then when you head to Skardu, you're like, okay, now this feels like we're getting out there, and then the further out you go, the more out there it really is. It's so remote.
And how was K2? That's a very famous mountain in the world of mountaineering, and it's as we spoke about, it's one of my dream mountains to climb actually. And unfortunately, I know that there's a 99% chance I will never be able to go there. So the closest I can get to K2 is to speak to people who've been there. So take me through K2.
Well, you can always move to Australia, become an Australian citizen, and then go. I've said this option to other friends of mine from India.
Yeah. So yeah, K2. How was K2? It's
Of course, like when you see K2, you're like, wow, K2 kind of
Mm.
thing. This massive pyramid. But all the mountains there in Pakistan are amazing because they just shoot straight up, so steep out of the
Right.
glacier.
Mm.
They're
Mm.
steep.
Mm.
That's the main thing, like they're steep. Lots of like many hours where you can't even take a break. Like there's really nowhere to just sit and stop, for the minute kind of thing. I like that though, because I mean you keep engaged. Slogging up a snow slope can get a little boring after a while.
Correct.
I do really like that fact that you gain altitude pretty quickly because you're just going straight up. I got to just above Camp 3, so I can't say what it's like above there, but it does get less steep. Like that's the main thing. Becomes a lot easier. It is more of a snow slog up until you get to the bottleneck.
What happened up there? You turned around?
So the actual reason why I turned around was because in Camp 2, accidentally ended up leaving a small stuff sack until about probably 2 hours before we were going to the summit. We didn't realize. When we did, what I realized was that my boot heaters were in it. For me, that is like it's the same for me as an oxygen bottle, essentially.
It's essential for you. You can't
As
go
I mean,
without.
as an oxygen bottle is to someone who's climbing with oxygen.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. And it also had our regulators and
Oh.
our masks in it. And I don't typically use the regulator or mask, but it's just in case of emergency. Lakpa didn't have his one either. That was a bit of a shock, and it was too late to go down and come back. So I guess what happened after that was like a lot of tears.
I know.
A lot of poor me kind of crap, like I'm the victim sort of bullshit. Ultimately, everything happens for a reason. I just have to trust that. Really good lesson in everything happens for a reason, because I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to try. I'd summited Broad Peak before that, and I couldn't have even imagined doing it without my boot heaters, to be honest. I knew like it was pretty much inevitable that I was going to turn back. But I also just thought, well, I'm here now. I may as well try, right? And I probably got like just over an hour above the camp before I like stopped feeling one foot, like the toes on one foot, and my other foot was getting cold, and there was no way I was going to warm it up because it's like 9 o'clock at night or whatever. Do I just want to keep going and not be able to warm it up and like I don't see the point. I turned around, like her obviously as well, and we went back to the tent. And as we were, when we got back to the tent, we left the radio on. A few hours later, then we started to hear, things on the radio. And that's when we heard about this avalanche, and my friend Ozzy was guiding, and he'd been hit by it, and he was just radioing the base camp saying like, they're coming back, it's too dangerous, the conditions are too dangerous. And I just said to him, come and see me like when you come back or whatever. It was a bit difficult because Lakpa's not that great at speaking English. So he was sort of translating what was going on because there was a lot of shouting and stuff like this. I kind of heard this kind of broken messages of translated. There was somebody that had died. The fixing team, there were avalanches going past the fixing team. They didn't know if they could continue on. I got obviously very upset because like my best friend was up there, Christine, Mikhail, who I was also very worried about. Mikhail was up there. I didn't want them to die. Yeah, and I just was crying in the tent. I just thought, you know what, if they all die and I never said anything, I'm going to feel like shit. I radioed, Christine, and actually Christine has this audio because it was recorded in the base camp. And I just said, like, if you can hear me, like, please turn back. I'm really worried about you. Or I can't exactly remember what I said, but I just was like, I just wanted to tell her. And I said, I'm not sure, but I think I said the same thing to Mikhail. Like, I was like, Mikhail, if you can hear me, like, it's not worth it. Mikhail told me, like, that they, him and Lama just said to each other, like, let's just try. And they tried. And for so long, like hours and hours and hours, not long after the radio, that's when Ozzy came back and he was saturated and he came into the tent and he just said like it's one of the like closest times where he thought he was going to die because he got hit by this avalanche. But thankfully, like, it was only up to like his thighs or something like that. And he just said there's like no way he was going to climb there with Lucy. He was guiding Lucy up there. So they turned around and because Lucy was very scared, obviously. Lucy's quite young. She's like 20.
19, I think. Not even 20 yet.
Oh, yeah, maybe 19, yeah.
I had her on the podcast a couple of episodes ago. So she spoke about the avalanche and how scared scary she was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they decided to go down and then we decided to go down and so we were going down and listening to what was going on, and it wasn't until I don't know what time that they made the summit, like 2:00 or something. It was pretty late anyway. It wasn't a fun day, and Mikhail, he didn't have a good day either. He still feels like he didn't have a good day.
This year we saw, even last year, that a lot of people summit a particular mountain. They come down to maybe camp 3 or camp 2, for example, on Everest. For whatever reasons, they are rescued. Sure, things can happen, and if there are helis, you should be rescued for sure. But when they come back, they claim this expedition as a summit, a successful summit. In my mind, and this is my opinion personally, there is no law written in the universe that this is it. But for what I feel, a successful expedition has to at least be a round trip. From base camp to summit, back to base camp on your feet. Because that is 100% completion, not 60%, not 70%. Now, why I'm picking this up is every year this is growing. The number of people who summit, they push themselves beyond the point of recovery, and then they are rescued and they go in the world claiming it as a success. So what do you think about this trend? In your eyes, would you call it a successful summit?
Well, in terms of like having a certificate or you're wanting to have a Guinness World Record, then it doesn't count. There is a rule. There is a rule. And that rule is base camp to base camp for that
But
So
they did get the summit certificates.
maybe the summit certificates in Nepal don't require the return to base camp, but
Maybe.
the Guinness World Record does, though, I can say that much. And if you're and not just the Guinness World Record, if you're going for a world record or you're wanting to be on the 14 peaks list, then to be on the 14 peaks list, you have to prove and show evidence and all that kind of thing that you've done that, gone base camp, summit to base camp. So my opinion, like, I kind of felt like on Everest, like I was at Camp 2 this year and I just could not get over the noise of the helicopter.
Correct.
6 a.m, it just was non-stop, taking one person at a time down, like a taxi service to the base camp, right? Well, this is like a new thing. Like I'd never thought this was a thing until now, right?
Correct.
And I did obviously go through that thought of like, what is going on here? But, I met one guy and he said to me, like, he'd just come down from the summit. And he just said to me, look, I've got these 2 young kids and I don't want to go back through the ice fall.
Well, that's a little bit convenient, like you summit and now you've gone through the ice fall to acclimatize, you've gone through the ice fall for the summit push, but now suddenly you worry about your kids. I mean, the worry is real, I understand that. But now when you are exhausted and now when you are becoming a bit lazy in your head, now you think about your kids. But the multiple trips
that's the thing. He's exhausted and he didn't want to go back down through there.
Correct.
Right? I don't have kids, so I can't say like this. If I had kids, how I would feel. Like I don't have kids. I actually chose not to have kids because of my climbing career. Like that was a choice. And I had a friend also, I'm not going to name them, do it too. They had an injury and they also did it, and they don't care about the certificate or whatever else. They just were proud of their achievement. And there is one other person who we both know probably quite well who took a helicopter down on a peak just recently because they didn't want to walk.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because now people are using heli to come down and they are being issued certificates and nobody's asking any questions and it's all like it's no problem. Maybe 3-4 years down the line, people will fly to Camp 3 or Camp 3 or Camp 2 or Camp 3, climb from there a day, come back another day and come back in the heli. It's not far. I'm predicting this will happen for sure.
Yeah, because that happens at the South Pole, like the last degree.
That's a different thing. That's something which...
Is it? But is it? I don't know. I'm just talking like I'm not even...
Interesting.
I don't even have an opinion. I'm just asking a question. Right?
Interesting. No, I agree. It's the same thing, actually. It's the same thing. And now this is the interesting thing about a human mind. See, I saw a very big fault in even my conditioning now. Because people have been doing it since years, flying to the last degree and skiing there, it's become normal in my head now that it's okay. So this is what I'm scared about. That will happen in climbing mountains also. That, like, for example, you have abandoned many peaks because you chose safety over success. I turned around on Annapurna and Manasulu last year because I chose again safety over success. I was very sure that if I keep pushing on Annapurna, I will be able to summit. May not be able to come down. Yeah. So I could have ordered for a heli. I had a bloody insurance with me. I'm just worried about where this trend will...
It's your personal choice, so I guess, like, at the end of the day, like, for you, that's like... You don't want to do that, right? Like, no, because
I would never do that.
Your values, that's important to you in terms of your values, right? The thing is that the guy with the kids, like, the values of his family were more important than him going through the ice fall.
Sure.
And I had thought about that until I met him. And then when he told me, and he,
Mm.
with such passion, you know, wanting to get back to his family, and he risked enough already, how could I argue with him? Like, I couldn't argue with him.
I don't have any authority to say anything to anybody because mountaineering is a sport which is a very individual sport. Everybody is free to do what they wish to do.
Yeah.
But like, for example, in any sport, it is a sport because it has certain rules, certain understood rules, and certain ethics which they are not willing to cross. For example, you can't touch your hand on the football. If somebody is coming towards you, you can hold the football like this. Why not? So
Yeah, but we
it's
don't have an umpire.
so that's what. So
Yeah,
there
we
has
don't
to
have
be
an umpire.
exactly, and that's the reason why I feel there has to be some sort of an understanding between, you know, in the climbing community, that these are the very basic 2-3 rules which no matter what we should not compromise with the purity of the sport. Like, in my opinion, base camp to base camp round trip is one of those rules which keeps this sport a little bit, you know, pure in some ways. But that's just my opinion because I'm not an umpire. That's why I speak about this topic a little passionately.
For me, what's important is base camp to base camp, same as you, of course. I obviously I've turned around on more 8,000ers than I've summited.
Mhm.
Those are my values. Should I be the authority to say that to those people? I don't know. I don't know, like, to say to that guy, like, hey, you need to go back down through the ice fall, even in the, you know, in the media or whatever. Like, a lot of the time people just don't understand the full story. And for example, what's happened to Christine is like the epitome of people not understanding. You know, she finished her project. This incredible achievement was just, I don't know what to even say, because I can just tell you how she was after, which was good. And that's because of what happened through the media. And, you know, there's the whole story there about what happened there. But for her to receive death threats and hate mail and
Death
all
threats.
this, yeah, is just, it's just next level. Like, it's, I don't even know what to say. You know, like, I think the problem is that we don't understand the whole story a lot of the time, and we just make our own judgment from what we see. A lot of people, you know, saw some videos that weren't even of her and made judgments of her just because she happened to be the most famous person there at the time or whatever.
Correct.
There was a lot more to the story,
Of course.
but no one took the time to find it out. And that was the consequence. Like, the whole internet just blew up and hated on her. And of course, like, mentally, like, it's pretty, of course, like, you can say, like, oh, you know, I'm not going to be affected by that kind of thing because whatever people comment or whatever. But when you have like 300, 400 comments, articles in the news all over the world and all this kind of thing, it's pretty difficult to not let it affect your mental health.
I mean, I've met her a couple of times last year when I was there on Manaslu, after that in Kathmandu, and we also recorded a podcast together before she started this round of her 14 peaks, you know, after the 12 between 14.
Yeah.
And such a genuine, you know, nice hearted person she is. And what an incredible achievement it is to climb 14 peaks in 92 days without even being rescued once or getting even one frostbite. You know, that's such an achievement. What a beast, physically and mentally, which people will never be able to understand what she has actually done. And those low level creatures are having opinions and are commenting and judging on her achievements. I think it hurts me also, and I can see the hurt in your eyes also for your friend.
Like, in Australia, many teenagers have committed suicide because of social media. They haven't told their parents that they were getting cyberbullied and all this kind of thing. So it's a modern day crisis in a way.
Before ending this, I have one last question for you. In the recent, at least, especially in the last 2-3 years, we've seen a lot of women climbers such as yourself, Christine, Priyanka Mohite from India, and many, many other women climber. Suddenly, in the last 2-3 years, we've seen the rise of women climbers breaking records and all the stereotypes more than men in the last 2-3 years, all the records and everything. So the question here is, do you think there is still some sort of inequality between men and women climber? You know what I'm saying? Do you think it still exists?
I've gone through the whole journey of like
Correct.
when I started mountaineering, I was like one of the only women climbing in
Wow.
South America.
Wow.
There's very few of us guiding back then as well, and it was so macho. Again, when I first went to the Himalayas, it was like same deal, like so macho. We're even joking with the helicopter pilot the other day, Kamal. It's Kamal. Like he's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to get him a job in Australia. So it's Almanac. When he took me and I've known him for a long time now, but when he took me and Tasha into Dalagiri base camp, like he saw she has these like brightly red painted fingernails, and he assumed like she mustn't be that strong, but literally should just come from the summit of Manaslu. So it's just interesting how there's these assumptions.
Exactly.
But talking to the Sherpa or the Nepali guides, they often tell me that they enjoy more working with the women because they're strong. They took training seriously. They've done like everything they could to get there. They don't take it for granted, and they're often got a higher success rate because of that. But for me, I guess the thing is I've just got so used to ignoring the comments and the shit or whatever because I've been doing it for so long that I kind of haven't noticed what the men have been doing. But what I have noticed is that there are so many more women now on the mountain, and it's just awesome.
I think it would be unfair to end this conversation without speaking about the cause that you are very passionately spreading awareness for. And see, I'm going to be very honest with you. As a man, I have very limited knowledge in that. So I'm going to ask you the question which a lot of people might have in their minds. We know what menopause is, but why is it like a cause that you are promoting it on a large scale? What is the problem there, and why is it that people need to have awareness about it?
So you said we know what menopause is. Well, if you know what menopause is, I didn't know what menopause was when it hit. Yeah, so you're like one step ahead of what I was. And I don't think that many people really do know what menopause is or what the symptoms are or
Take us through it. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, so like 2 years ago, menopause hit me when I stopped taking the pill, and basically 2 weeks later I just was a completely different person. I didn't even know what it was, but I had like severe symptoms. And at the time, like I was training and everything, and I know my body, pretty well because I'm training all the time. I'm measuring my heart rate, I know how I feel, how to recover, like all that kind of stuff. So when it hit me, the symptoms were, night sweat. So I would sleep through the night normally, but I would wake up like completely awake with insomnia, just dripping in sweat, like soaking the sheets like boiling hot. I had brain fog. I had fatigue, severe depression. I had I don't like to say all these things because women are going to go, oh my God, but it's the truth. Joint ache, muscle pain, skeletal pain. I wasn't able to recover from my workouts. very well. I had to go to I had to pee all the time, like every 5 minutes. There's so many symptoms, like I can't even remember all of them because there were like so many. I just assumed I'm never gonna climb again. Like, how am I gonna do an expedition like this? It's impossible. And I just completely lost who I was. Where did I go? I don't know. So it took a while to finally get on the right medication because most doctors aren't trained in this. In Australia anyway, they spend 4 hours of their entire training on it.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
So, and half the world goes through this phase of life. So, so it took a few doctors to finally find like a menopause trained doctor who put me on the right medication, hormone therapy. And that changed my life. Like a month later, I got rid of all the big symptoms. The brain fog started to disappear. So because I could think straight, the depression got better. And then after a year, my body went back 10 years, basically. That's how I felt like. And I now realize like how many symptoms I had and how long. So for me, it was combined with like a midlife crisis. I went through a divorce and all of these things, like I just was in a black hole. I managed to, thankfully, the medication of course helped, which was just hormones, not antidepressants, because many women get put on antidepressants because their menopause isn't treated. And that's why I've got to the point now where I'm doing my dream project.
Wow.
Because I'm like, it's now or never, like I need to just live my dream.
What you are doing, I think it will help a lot of women to just understand that.
Talk about it,
Sure.
And of course, like my symptoms are on the extreme. I mean, no, there's more extreme symptoms. I've met women, like women have again committed suicide because of all of this.
Oh, really?
They've lost their jobs. They were CEOs. They couldn't work as CEOs anymore. So it's pretty like serious issue, to be honest.
To end this conversation on a light note, I have something called as rapid fire questions. Do you know what rapid fire questions are?
Go for it.
What is your biggest weakness in your eyes?
So when you're on the spiritual path, like everything's a lesson. The hardest part, I'm not going to say it's my biggest weakness, but I think the hardest part of the journey is to always maintain a level of consciousness that's higher than victim consciousness. And that is the consciousness where you think that your situation, you're controlled by your situation and the environment. And to be in the level of consciousness and awareness of that you're the creator. That's a constant battle.
Wow. What is your favorite meal, your favorite food?
It's probably at the moment, because it changes all the time.
Sure.
And a grass-fed steak. Australian beef steak.
Okay, awesome. Which is
Which
your
is not good for you guys. Sorry, I'm so sorry because you can't eat cows.
Which is your current favorite movie?
I've been to the Banff Film Festival twice now in Australia. All of the movies that we got were really good, but it was really nice to watch the one, I think it's called Dusar by Andres Bargel.
Correct.
Yeah.
The
But I
skier.
say name properly. And when they skied Layla Peak, and it was just so nice to see Pakistan. And
If you could have one superpower, what is that one superpower that you wish to have?
I think it would be always see the world through the eyes of compassion.
Which has been your favorite 8,000-meter expedition?
The last one.
The last one being Manaslu?
Yeah. Because it was the third time there. The first time I tried without oxygen, but I ended up using it. And then last year, as you know, the weather was terrible. So to go back, there's just something about that mountain. It's just so special.
You were there
And to
last year
Yeah.
in Seven Summit.
Yes.
God, I missed meeting you. I was there also.
Oh, maybe we were in a different tent. I don't know.
No, I was not in the Seven Summit. I was with Satori.
Oh, okay.
But I came to Seven Summit camp almost every day to meet some of my friends there.
Oh, we probably did meet, but just passed by each other or
Yeah, I
something.
think so. Damn.
Anyway, yeah. So to stand on the true summit, in just perfect weather and that
Wow.
view, everything was just, yeah.
If time travel was possible,
Yeah.
and if you had the chance to go back in the history to a particular event that happened.
Oh, the first thing that came into my mind was like that festival in United States where who played at it? Like Jimi Hendrix. And yeah, I don't know when that was. I was trying to think of the name of the festival. I've had like a mind blank, but just that time, like where it was so like peace and love, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono were having a protest in their bed, and yeah, that I would have loved to have been around then in that era.
If a movie is made on your life, which actor do you think should play your role?
Naomi Watson, of course, because she's
Mhm.
Australian.
What is the biggest fear you have in your life?
To not live what I'm capable of.
What is the wildest thing you have done in your life, according to you?
Right, the time of the Kumbh Mela, and I was like 21. I was camping on the beach with the sadhus. You know how they have like a human skull?
Aghoris. The Aghoris.
Yeah,
Yes.
I drank tea out of one of them. And at the time I thought, wow, this is so out there.
If logic or resources, there were no limitations in this world whatsoever, what is that one crazy thing which you would like to do?
I was going to say travel to different dimensions, but I kind of do that already. That's another conversation.
That is.
I think I will do it, but I've always wanted to base jump. They say that you should do like 200 skydives first, so I haven't even started that journey, but I think it would be really cool in my old age to be like a old age like an 80-year-old base jumper.
What's next?
I'm here in Australia until next spring working on my business because as you can imagine, the project budget is very large. To be honest, the raising of the funds for the project is the hardest part of the project, not the climbing, and the climbing's hard. So similar to Christine, like Christine sold her apartment to fund her project at first. Like Christine is actually the reason why I'm doing this project, because she inspired me to. When I met her, like I met her at the very beginning, like the day I got to Nepal last year in Kathmandu. That's when we met, and then we went to the Khumbu, and then we were on Annapurna together, and I've been with her on the whole journey, and you know, inspired me to do my dream. Similar to her, she sold her apartment to fund. At the beginning, I've like refinanced my home. There's a lot of I'm not gonna say pressure, like I'm making it work, but it's not easy, and people don't understand that. Like, you know, you hear these comments online, like people saying there's rich white people or whatever. This is like a common comment that I hear. Or the biggest project is the business side.
Amazing. I'm really so inspired listening to you, and to be able to have this chance to talk to you and share your story with the audience that follows me. I really from the bottom of my heart wish you all the best for your project, and may you climb all the mountains that you wish to, and may you rise within yourself also to whatever peaks that a human being can rise to. Just be safe and all the best.